Originally opened in 1906 as a poorhouse, housing the impoverished working class of Renfrew and Glasgow, this statutory authority residential care complex stood not only as a monument to the injustice of Edwardian middle-class morality, but as a testament to the failed myth of municipal socialism. Taken over, modernised and opened by Glasgow Corporation in 1938, it was sold as the cutting edge of social care, housing up to 342 older people in dormitory accommodation and up to 136 in cottage and terrace type housing. Established in its own grounds, it came complete with gardens, bowling green, cinema, laundry and kitchens, and a much publicised cottage lifestyle. Just as in 1938, entrance to this place is through a dreary, dark, wood-panelled hall, hung with drab sepia photographs commemorating long-past municipal glories and a needlework tapestry that not only reinforced the myth that this was a good place in which to live, but testified to the commitment, compassion, care and institutionalisation of both staff and residents. Walking down the long tile-lined corridors, through the double swing doors that open onto the entrance to the shared living areas, your senses are instantly overcome by the cloying smell of urine and disinfectant. Climbing the stairs to the deserted wards that were once the sleeping and living areas, your attention is drawn to the fluted glass of a redundant carer's workstation, an image that's more than suggestive of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Any attempt to promote the notion of the individual long abandoned. The floor littered with the debris of human experience, boxes of empty labelled identical women's purses, Bibles and cast-off false teeth. Standing in silence, listening to the drip of water through the roof, it's hard to believe that older people once lived here, that we as a so-called caring society ever condemned older people to live in this dreadful place. Walking about the unit, it's hard not to feel a growing sense of anger, despite the opinions of both staff and residents that this was once a good place, providing good care. Everything about it reflects the dehumanising effects of institutionalisation and the cruel reality of resource rather than needs-led care provision. Despite attempts to improve the environment through new light fittings, carpeting, curtains and the creation of individual personal living space, many residents carried out their most personal activities in an atmosphere marked by minimum privacy and frugal acceptance. In a place devoid of privacy, small groups of men and women, joined in informal gender segregation, spend much of their empty day busily engaged in silence, their mute presence in walled-off Hessian squares, the only concession to maintaining the privacy and dignity of other older people dressing or confined to bed. With the ambience of this place best described as stark and oppressive, the financial austerity reflected in the long-stained linoleum floor tiles was matched only by the flaking paint and sanitised gloss of the bathing areas in adding to or creating an atmosphere of institutional neglect. Windows in toilet and bathroom doors laid bare the most private of human functions. Empty wards filled only with plastic screens, uniform bedspreads, furniture and row upon row of incontinent-friendly plastic chairs defied any attempt to apply the principles of normalisation, independence, dignity and choice. With up to 10 older people forced to share a communal sleeping space, even this limited privacy was subject to the passage and gaze of staff, visitors and other users seeking access to the unit's lounge and dining areas. In an institution where sensitivity to gender was more wishful thinking than fact, the older person, institutionalised, marginalised, desexualised and secure only in their confusion, wander unhindered. Beat pounding these barn tile-lined corridors and shabby wards, with little or nothing to do. For many older people condemned to live here, the highlight of the day was the crash and jangle of the food trolley. In this institution, where the dearth of agency resources was matched only by the low levels of staff training, the unit's original poorhouse ethos lived on. Similar to many other residential units providing care of the older person, this red brick geriatric ghetto laid claim to the notion of client self-determination. In the context of choice, dignity, independence, and the right of the older person to maintain a separate and distinct identity, self-determination took on the character of 9/10 illusion, 1/10 reality. Self-determination, perhaps best described as a grand illusion. Not alone in its fostering of institutional neurosis, this primary care unit crystallised what for many older people is the norm in residential institutions, claiming care of rather than care for the older person. A residential unit whose focus was more in containment than care, batch processing and the sterility of barn lounge life, joined with the dearth of formal staff training in the unit's drive to achieve institutional conformity. In this bleak institutional world, where attention to efficiency and task completion served only to negate the older person's social and emotional needs, the older person's feelings of despair were often subject to camouflage and self-denial. The frail or confused older person, trapped in the staff-user power imbalance, joined in collusion with the staff group in defining and fostering institutional norms. In these institutional lodgings, where loss of gender role and sexual identity, joined with minimum physical and mental stimulation in generating system-induced old age, the older person, stripped of independence and power, survived amidst the clutter and loneliness of communal living. This older woman's time in residential care, marked only by an assault on her sexual identity, a visual memory of her most private of human functions recorded in the institution's photograph album. With the older person spending up to 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, in a climate of institutional neglect, with no place to be alone, no opportunity to develop personal relationships, with Bing Crosby, bingo and raffia baskets the main focus of leisure activity, the unit's response to user frustration and anger was often diagnosis as difficult and control by means of increased medication. Best described as a dark age home, psychological investment and emotional ownership by staff was marked only in its negative intensity by the degree of racism, homophobia and sexism expressed by individual staff members. Despite the fact that this complex once housed 62% of elderly residential social care placements, in a geographical area embracing a total population of 277,000, 46,000 over the official retirement age, with the highest concentrations of non-white and black minorities in Scotland, no senior members of staff could remember there ever having been a black resident. In a statutory agency resource whose staff complement once numbered in excess of 400, only one staff member represented those from the black and non-white minorities. Black imagery was visible only by its absence. Faced with the suggestion that the statutory agency is racially flawed and does little to address the needs of black or ethnic minority older people, the response has been the development of a multicultural, race relations, colour-blind approach to service provision. An approach, when decoded, really means the expected abandonment by the black community of their ethnic and cultural values, and assimilation by a society in which to be racist is the structural, institutional and personal norm. With the closure of this redundant model of statutory residential care, that in real terms did little or nothing to understand or meet the religious or cultural needs of the non-white, non-Christian care purchaser. We are now long past the point of considering the establishment of add-on or discrete service provision, reflecting the specific and presently neglected religious, dietary and cultural requirements of black and non-white older people. With the closing of history's door on this redundant poorhouse, just how far have our ideas on the rights of the older person and our understanding of institutional care come? In the initial stages of development, this new showcase multi-bedded residential resource unit, though well furnished and exhibiting high standards of decor, still houses 48 older people. While provision has been made to employ 2 black or non-white staff members, a year into its development, there are no black or non-white users. Built in an urban area that houses the largest black and non-white population in Scotland, the day centre and unit kitchens are required to order in appropriate dietary provision or provide the presently non-existent, non-white, non-Christian service user with a salad. With the unit trapped in the inherently racist demand versus resources debate, with little or no appropriate food, no black staff and no provision made for religious needs, are we really surprised that no black or non-white older people either drop in, use the day centre or reside here?